Hi, I'm Nicholeen Peck, and I teach all over the world about parenting, good communication, how to build strong family bonds through the lens of the principle self-government. And in this video, we're talking about how teaching self-government is proactive, not reactive. In this video, we're going to be talking about what teaching self-government is and how it is proactive instead of reactive, like most parenting. Teaching self-government is a principle of freedom. In fact, all free societies have had self-government in one degree or another. Self-government comes back to the individual. It gives the individual power over their own happiness, their own decisions, and it really does honor the choice that each person has. When a person has self-government, they understand the cause and effect of any given situation, and they possess a knowledge of their own behaviors so that they can control them. They understand that they actually do have a voice and a say in their destiny. They can choose one way or the other. They can course correct. They don't need to blame anyone, and they can take responsibility for themselves. I know that seems like a pretty high bar, but it's actually a very old idea, a historic idea. I definitely didn't make it up. All free societies have been based on the concept of each person being able to determine their destiny through self-government. So, how do you have self-government in your family? In your home, when you teach your children self-government, you teach them cause and effect by being consistent in your parenting interactions. You proactively pre-teach them about what skills they need and why. You train them and teach them. You practice things the right way many, many times. And then when the moment comes, if they don't do it the right way, you tell yourself that's okay, you correct them, and then you pre-teach it as part of the correction the right way again. Teaching self-government is all about the learning process. It is not about being punitive. It's not about disciplining children or making them do things you want them to do. It's about teaching them self-mastery and empowering them to take responsibility for their own decisions and to learn the skills that they will need for success. Reactive parenting is usually emotional parenting, so that's the big difference. Teaching self-government parenting is proactive because it is non-emotional. That doesn't mean that you don't care or that you don't show love or affection toward your children. What it means is that you do not parent through emotion. Instead, you appeal to the prefrontal cortex of the brain. Now, the child's prefrontal cortex is developing slowly. It's not fully developed until they're in about their mid-20s. So what that means is that they need constant teaching and repetitive practice done in a safe environment. This means that the parent is calm, accepting, trusting, loving, while also being firm and consistent in the lessons that the child needs to learn. When a parent takes the time to set up this type of environment, the child has the optimal opportunity for success. Reactive parents are often the ones who will yell at their children, hit their children, make excuses for why they misbehaved as parents. They talk about their children as if the children are the problem. But in reality, all children are learning and growing. They all make mistakes. That's what it means to be a child. A good proactive parent understands that and starts the work of teaching the skills that the child will need to overcome those problems. When you're proactive in your parenting, you don't usually take things personally when your child makes a mistake. That doesn't mean you love it, but you don't take it as a reflection of you. You recognize that that's just a message that more training, more learning needs to happen. In the teaching self-government system to parenting, there aren't reactive elements. So the children do learn cause and effect by earning positive consequences and negative consequences, but they aren't reactive consequences because they know about these consequences long before they're ever used. So if you've already subscribed to this channel, then you know that I talk a lot about pre-teaching on this channel. When a parent pre-teaches their child, they prepare the child by laying out the big picture of what's going to come. Now, there are 3 different types of pre-teaching. I'm talking right now about instructional pre-teaching. At the very beginning of learning self-government, the family lays out the whole system so that the child learns all the skills, how they'll be corrected, what the consequences will be. In our family, we often use an extra chore, and there's a reason for that. Extra chores are not emotional things. Yelling is emotional, it's reactive. Or being vindictive, heavy-handed, using physical violence. Those are all things that have a tendency to be emotional and would be considered reactive, meaning one person does something and that makes a reaction happen over here and we end up getting into a power struggle. Good parenting should not have power struggles. So what does it look like if it's proactive? In the teaching self-government parenting approach, the proactivity is everywhere. First, the parent focuses on their own self-government. That's proactive. They learn about calmness, roles, the principle of self-government, and even create a vision for the family. The vision for the family is a proactive step preparing the family for where they're headed in the future. And the parent deliberately makes a plan for them to be better at their own self-government. Then they talk to the children about roles, about self-government, and about that family vision. That's proactive. More preparation. That's good front brain work because the front part of the brain does all of the planning and problem solving for the person. Next comes the skills. They learn the 4 basic skills of self-government, which are following instructions, accepting no answers and criticism, accepting consequences, and disagreeing appropriately. They also learn the skills that the parents are going to be using, those 5 teaching styles that are contained in the TSG parenting course to help parents know better how to calmly correct their children. The children learn about family meetings, and in the family meetings, they talk about family legislation, decisions, and problem solving. They don't react to what's happening, they make plans for how to handle the problem. They learn problem solving skills like the SOTAS exercise, which helps develop the prefrontal cortex. And even in the moments where a child is completely out of control and a parent has to try to help point them back toward calmness, the parent is using skills that they taught the child they would use long before the child ever actually went out of instructional control. That's just a beginning of how teaching self-government is a proactive process. When a person is truly self-governed, they make a plan, they follow through with their plan. If things go off course, they course correct to get back in alignment with their plan. It is the most successful route that a person can take to get to their own self-government. Now, I've just been talking about a lot of things here, and there are many ways to learn about them, but I highly recommend that for your next video, you watch the full-length class called The Not So Known Secret for Parenting Success, which will give you a lot of the nuts and bolts about these skills that I've been mentioning here on this video. So click on the link to that video next. I'll see you there.